into it. I liken the white box to sort of a wizard's grimoire. It's like confusing. You just look at it, you have to understand it, you have to keep going back to it, you have to make up your own stuff, there's stuff missing, but there's magic in it, and you can get stuff out of it. But it's that work that you have to put into it that sort of makes it exciting.
What did they really like? No. Yeah, it was interesting. This panel I was on at DenverCon also had Steve Perrin on it, and Steve Perrin was one of the designers of RuneQuest, also an old-time guy, and he had something called the Perrin Conventions back in the 70s, and basically when they were putting on DenverCon, which started as Dungeons and Dragons Con, as DenverCon, because there are so many different house rules for how to actually play D&D properly, he compiled the house rules that they were going to use when they ran D&D at DenverCon. And then...
So they could agree on something.
So they could agree, like, okay, this is how we're doing thieves or whatever.
Right.
And then that ended up getting distributed, you know, very much on the West Coast, but eventually it went into Atlas, like large excursions, and got spread all around. And he told a really funny story about how after RuneQuest came out, he was at Origins going to be on a seminar, and instead of introducing him as, you know, one of the authors of RuneQuest, he was introduced as author of the Perrin Conventions. That was his game.
Standardized D&D.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, we're still doing it, right?
Yeah.
We're still inventing new flavors of D&D. And I have to confess, even on the car ride down to the convention today, I was having a conversation, you know, we should do our own system. I shook my head. But the temptation is there, right? Every dungeon master wants to tweak and improve. And I think what we're after, of course, is that pure sword and sorcery, D&D done right, to our tastes. And I think, yeah, okay, we all do that, but more interesting to me is the urge or the sense that there is one true D&D, and we all keep trying for it.
If only it were the same for all of us.
If only. And I mean, this panel could easily devolve into Edition Wars nastiness, but you've all heard that before, and that's what the internet is for, so we're probably not going to hash that out here. But certainly everybody does have their house rules, and everybody does have, well, this is the way I think it works. I threw away encumbrance rules for many, many, many years. I still kind of just turn to them and shake my head generally when I see them, because for me that's not D&D. D&D is take the loot, stuff it in your bag of holding, and move on, right? You don't want to be counting rations and counting coins and doing bookkeeping. Yeah, well, but I was going to counter my own point. One of my players loved that. He had spreadsheets for coins and how much he paid each servant and each hireling and each henchman, and how much money came in from the cattle this year. Like, this is some other game. Go play a real-time strategy game. Go play Farmville. But, I mean, as far as he was concerned, that was part of D&D too, was running the manor, running the fiefdom.
Well, when I did the second edition of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay a few years ago, and one of the things I discovered in that process was, you know, during the playtest of it, dealing with all the different people who had, you know, loved the first edition. And the first edition of Warhammer was a quirky system, it had a lot of bits to it, and what I discovered during the playtest was that each group sort of decided what bits of that book were important and not important, and each of them, in a way, crafted their own vision of what Warhammer really was. And so when I came in, and based on the experience of me who played the game for 20 years or whatever, in my groups, I was like, okay, well, we want to cut this and do this and add this and don't use this. And of course, we had screaming fights about it because other people didn't agree. You know, they thought it was a feature, not a bug, that one career might get you a skill, and another career could give you 20 skills, and both of those are starting characters. And it was very interesting to see, in a way, the blinkers some people had about what was even in the original book. They just totally forgot there was a whole D&D style section of magic items in there, for example, because they just sort of put that out of their minds. So, you know, that was part of first edition, technically.
But not as far as they were concerned.
But I think that gets to the, you know, the kind of heart of the whole thing, right? I mean, the entire genre itself is kind of a kludge, right? You know, I mean, from, you know, its inspirations in, you know, Elric and, you know, or Dying Earth or Conan, or, I mean, you know, there's a lot of different influences, and for different groups, those influences hold different weight. And, you know, that not only goes to, you know, story concerns, but it goes to rules concerns. You know, it kind of filters through the entire game. So, you know, from the very beginning, everybody had their own idea about what it should be. And, you know, it's not just, you know, game to game or group to group, it's player to player, right? You know, everybody's trying to find that nugget of fantasy that they want to explore and play with. And, you know, the rules have done, you know, all sorts of different jobs throughout the years trying to get at that, you know, and every different system tries to go at it in a different way.
All right, well, since you bring up system, I'm not going to pass up this opportunity. No, we're not going to have the edition war, but, I mean, come on.
Can we settle it with bum wrestling?
Well, I'd like to, I mean, come on, we've got designers for all major systems here, editions, what have you. I kind of just want to hear from everyone what is great about a particular instantiation of D&D, Warhammer, what have you, and what makes it D&D. And you know, we could start chronologically or otherwise. You sort of gave us Warhammer. Do you want to give us?
Well, I wouldn't really argue that Warhammer is D&D per se, but if we're going to talk about various editions of D&D, I guess I would just say that probably my favorite one is the Rules Cyclopedia iteration.
Yes.
Is that distilled down all those, you know, basic expert sets into one nice beefy hardback that was just like, here's D&D in a book, you know, and it really has I think the highest concentration of sort of classic D&D-isms in it.
Oh yeah,
you know,
3-column layout,
But cleaned up.
tiny type.
Has a mass combat system in it.
Yeah.
You know, it's got monsters, treasure, goes up to like 30th level. You know, yeah. So and I think it's less complicated than several other iterations of D&D. So
Sure.
that's more to my taste. If you've looked at the Dragon Age game that I did, you can tell that that's really more my speed.
Speed it up and simplified.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I don't know. You wrote 3rd edition. What do you think?
Well, I was going to talk about the white box original set, and what's interesting about just about everything that was written in that era, the Arduin series or, you know, Adventures, Judges Guild stuff, is that it's very conscious that gamers are writing how they play games for other gamers. And there's a real sense that the original Dungeons & Dragons is sort of a bunch of notes about how you could do it if you wanted to do it.
Right. If you already got the idea.
Right. And so the original system said there are 2 different ways you could do combat, depending on how you wanted to do that, and what have you, and lots of stuff was left open, like, they just had a list of monsters, here's all the monsters standing up, barely, and then here's just a bunch of other ideas for monsters that you could just do. If you know, now that you got the idea. D&D doesn't do that anymore, right? It hasn't done that for a long time. It's been sort of nailed down, and it's really been, this is what a brand-conscious company does for its buying consumers.
And consumers appreciate it. I mean,
It's
a lot of us scratch our heads.
better edited, I mean, there's a ton of ways in which the editions that came later are better than that original one. But what's charming about the original one is that you're looking at a gamer's notes about the games that he and his buddies play.
And look at the demographic. I mean, it was a Mensa. We were a Mensa-laden group of people in high school. I'm sorry, I played the first set.
Yeah.
I was a token jock, but all my other friends were all 150 or above Mensa types.
Yeah.
And they would have been pissed if you put out a perfect system.
Yeah.
They would have messed with it no matter what, and they were happy when we finally got the Gygax statement about the official rules. There was a huge rebellion in the late 70s saying, you know, and Mark Miller didn't make that mistake with Prowler. He said, this is the guidelines. I'm just saying it. So it's interesting, the whole cultural thing there. Sorry.
No.
They've been through that, and we didn't like it when you started getting better at writing rules. We sort of,
Right.
Please give us more crappy rules.
exactly. So we can bitch about it and make our own. So.
I'm going to quote that back to you after my next product release.
I think I owe you something about 3rd edition.
Well, I'd like to hear it.
So I look at 3rd edition as the best ever version of a D&D 1st edition.